Okay, everyone, hello. We are moving on to book number 11, Circle of Life, in Jesus' name, part 3. And we will begin with, I don't think I need to go through all of everybody's names and ages because it pretty much hasn't changed. We're starting just a few hours after book 10 ended. We'll begin with the scripture, Colossians 3:23 through 24. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ that you are serving. And then we have a quote from no other than Grandmaster Eric Kino. We are not here to lie on soft mattresses or sit in comfy chairs and be entertained by fools. We are here to serve God by serving his children. All right. And then I have a little tiny note to reader, which says, note to reader, DND number 9, A Circle of Life, and DND number 10, Circle of Life Part 2, in Jesus' name. And this book, which is DND number 11, Circle of Life, in Jesus' name, Part 3. The first two really must be read before you start on this book. If you are unable to obtain them, email me at earthgirlsusan@gmail.com or mccartneygreen@gmail.com, and I will send you a free PDF of number 9 or number 10 to your email. Make sure you put in the subject line, free number 9 or number 10. Chapter 1. October 22nd, Tuesday, just before noon. Press conference, FBI Field Office, Los Angeles, California. The Kino family waited inside the lobby of the FBI building. They were promptly briefed that Special Agent Williams would give a quick rundown for the press, and then it would be open to questions. Currently, they stood quietly watching through the front window as Tex set up a lectern and a microphone, and cameramen and reporters filled into the area just past the steps. Good grief, Jordan whispered. How many news stations are there in L.A.? Well, it's not just L.A., Bree answered her. But there are approximately 23 local news outlets, and then there are even more national news personnel and print reporters, and then there's the social media people, like Isla August, like we gave Isla a pass, and several others who requested a pass, whom we like to support. Well, this is all so weird. I feel like I'm in another world, Jordan said. I know what you mean, Gabe said, but you get used to it. Young Eric looked down at her and smiled and squeezed her hand. She looked up at him. You're awfully quiet. He nodded. I'm just getting my thoughts in order in case anyone asks me any questions, which I'm sure they will. Oh, are you nervous? No, I just like being prepared. You don't think they'll ask me any questions, do you? Well, it's possible. Oh, I don't know if I can do this. Well, if they ask you something and you don't want to speak, just let me know, and I'll speak for you. She nodded. The main thing is that they see you right here, by my side, a show of solidarity for our family. Okay, well, how do I look? Taylor giggled. You look cute as ever, and my top looks better on you than it does on me. Young Eric looked over at his father, who was unusually quiet. He was looking out the glass doors, scanning the area. Besides local police and FBI, there were at least a dozen or more Ameritech agents who would completely encircle the family once they step outside. They were all in black, vested and armed, and they looked very intimidating. Uncle Joey was outside, looking things over and looking very official in his black suit with the Ameritech seal embroidered on the breast pocket. Eric thought about that seal. It was new, thanks to Gabe's ideas. It was a start to having Ameritech being recognized instantly and bringing honor and pride into being an agent. The seal included an eagle to represent the USA, since that's where Ameritech came from. And in front of the eagle's midsection was the world. And in one claw was a flag. This one happened to be a U.S. flag, but it depended on whatever country the agent is working for. And in the other claw, the scales of justice. And on a ribbon above the eagle were 3 words: love, strength, and peace. Eric liked it, and he was impressed with how a few words from Gabe was changing an entire giant company. They were changing titles and ranks, too, and they soon would have new dress uniforms. It was exciting. His thoughts came to an end as the aide motioned for the Kenos to follow him, and they all filed out onto the steps in front of the building. Immediately, there was a loud sound of cameras clicking away. Ricky and Bree stood on the top step. In front of them stood Gabe, then Taylor, Jordan, and young Eric. Also on the steps were FBI Agent Williams, Chief Ameritech Agent Joey Adams, the police chiefs from the Los Angeles Police Department and the Hillcrest Police Department. And Special Agent Williams immediately stepped up to the mic, and in a strong voice and a very no-nonsense attitude, he introduced himself and the other people behind him, spoke about how they all worked together, and then began to explain the case. He began with young Eric's abduction from the convenience store. He spoke of how they pulled the video, which he understood was leaked to the public, and therefore knew that they had all seen it. He went on to explain the facts in the case, the phone calls made, the videos, how they deduced from info Eric gave them on the videos that he was being held across the border, and how they worked with the Mexican police, Ameritech, and private volunteers to search the northern Mexican Baja area mines. He then explained how little Josie Perez was taken from her school and brought to the place where Eric Keno III was being held. Williams finally succinctly ended with a curt statement. Before we were able to find Eric Keno and Josie Perez, Eric was able to get out of his restraints. He was able to subdue his abductors, and he discovered Miss Perez in a room. They left the mine together, but were detained by Peter Perez, who was the main conspirator. Mr. Keno was then able to overcome Mr. Perez and use his phone to call for help. Within 10 minutes, the Mexican police, myself, and other FBI and Ameritech agents were there to assess the situation and to gain custody of the abductors. We're grateful that this heinous act was able to come to a conclusion where the victims were recovered safely. We're grateful to the Mexican authorities working with us and for the fine law enforcement personnel who collaborated on this case. When we work together, we are powerful. He nodded at LAPD chief. I'll turn the time over to Chief Boyd. There was silence as the chief walked forward. I agree wholeheartedly with Special Agent Williams that together we are powerful. We will now take questions. He pointed at one national reporter. This was obviously a harrowing experience. As a mother myself, I'd like to ask Brianna Adams her thoughts on what took place. The chief stepped back and Bree moved forward. She smiled and nodded. It's been a difficult few days. It's been a difficult few days. We love our children so much and we want them safe and alive. And when that safety is threatened, we have a choice. We can fall apart completely or we can stay strong and stay in prayer and ask God to protect them. We did the latter, and we're grateful that we've been allowed to keep Eric with us. And I know I can speak for Jewel Perez, Josie's mother, who has become a dear friend of mine, that she feels the same way. She immediately stepped away, and the chief called on another reporter. Was Eric Keno's arrest a few weeks ago related to the abduction? The chief nodded. It actually was. Peter Perez hired men to drug his stepdaughter and try to pin the blame on Mr. Keno. Can you tell us why he did that? And was that related to the attempted stabbing of Jordan Brooks? Yes, the attempted stabbing was related. Mr. Perez had been incarcerated for the attempted rape of his stepdaughter 5 years ago. He seemed to build up some resentment for her during that time. Once he got out of jail on probation, he violated that probation by accosting Miss Brooks. He knew once he'd crossed that line that she would try to have his probation revoked, and so he began to threaten her. Then, apparently, his attention shifted to Mr. Keno and, more appropriately, the Keno's money. He looked around and pointed at a reporter from the LA Times. Thank you, Chief. My question is for Eric Keno. Is it true that you actually killed several men in order to get away from your abductors? Young Eric drew a deep breath. His father put a calming hand on his shoulder, and Eric moved forward to stand in front of the microphone. As camera shutters clicked, madly, he nodded. Yes, it's true. Did you actually have to kill them? Well, it was kill them or me. I was in survival mode. I fought with them. They tried to kill me. I came out on top of those battles, and I'm grateful for that. And I didn't know at first that Perez had taken little Josie. And when I found her, I knew I had to do whatever I could to make sure we both get back alive. So, how many had you fought before you found Josie? I'd fought 6 men. I killed 4 of them. I understand you killed 5 men. Who was the last man you killed? Eric sighed. After I found Josie, we got out of the mine where we were being held, and Perez jumped me with a large hunting knife. How did you kill him? Eric frowned, and Ricky Kino stepped forward. It's been a hard time for Eric, having had to kill in order to save his own life and that of Josie. He'd rather not go into the details right now, as it's been traumatic for him. The reporter started to argue, but stopped when Ricky raised his brows at him and pinned him with a dark stare. Chief Boyd pointed to another reporter. Thank you, the woman said. I heard you actually shot your abductors. Is that true? Ricky remained by his son's side as young Eric spoke. I shot the one who was trying to shoot me and one other. And where did you get the gun? From the guy trying to shoot me, he said slowly. The chief called on another reporter. Thank you. Will there be any charges brought against Eric Kino for the killing of any of those 5? Special Agent Williams stepped forward. There has been a thorough investigation at the scene, and no charges will be brought against Mr. Kino. The case is closed. Eric and Ricky went back to stand on the steps, and the chief called on another reporter. Miss Brooks, can you comment on your relationship with Eric Kino? She looked up at Eric, her eyes wide. What should I say? If you want to answer, then tell the truth, but you don't have to give details. And if you don't want to answer, just say no comment at this time. He smiled at her and touched her cheek. Or I can answer for you. She swallowed. I'll do it. I'm not a coward. She went to the mic and drew a deep breath. Eric and I have just recently started dating, but we are very close. And I think he's an amazing guy. And I'm proud of him for getting out of that mine and for saving my sister. And just this morning, I told God, thank you for giving him the strength he needed to get out of those handcuffs and fight those bad men. If he hadn't, well, I can't even imagine what would have happened. The reporter who'd asked about him being charged spoke up again without being called upon. So it's okay with you that your boyfriend just killed 5 men? Okay with me? Absolutely. Special Agent Williams just told you what they had planned. If Eric hadn't taken care of business, he and my little sister would be sealed into little pine boxes and buried somewhere in northern Mexico, dying a long, slow, agonizing death. Do you have a sister or brother or mother or father? Try to imagine the terror taking place if they were taken. Why are you trying to spin this against Eric? If he did what he had to do, he did what he had to do to stay alive. If right now you were on fire, you would roll on the ground and scream and beg someone to help you put out that fire, and no one would fault you for wanting that fire out. Well, that's how it was. It was like he was on fire, and he did what he had to do to put that fire out. And I think you're out of questions. She turned abruptly and walked back to Eric's side. The whole family was grinning at her. Taylor hugged her. I knew you were one of us, she whispered. That'll make the national news, Gabe said softly with a chuckle. The chief pointed to Isla August. Go ahead. Thank you, thank you, she said brightly. Had to get into character for Isla. Eric, we can all see from the bruises on your face that you have some injuries. Are there injuries that we can't see? Young Eric stepped down again. Hi, Isla, and thanks for the question. Yes, I have 3 large and 1 small knife cut on my chest and abdomen. One of the cuts was infected, but it's getting better quickly, and I also have a concussion. How did you get the concussion? She asked. It happened when the guy who abducted me bashed my head against a concrete wall while I was restrained. There was a murmur from the crowd. A bunch of reporters raised their hands quickly. Go ahead, the chief said. Eric, are you still planning on fighting in the Kino Challenge? He nodded. Yes. I won't be able to train for another week because of the concussion, but I'm still going to be able to make it. And do you think this little interlude in your training is going to hold you back, maybe injure your chances of winning? Eric smiled. Well, I don't know, but we'll know by the end of the challenge. Someone asked the Hillcrest police about their place in the investigation, and Eric went back to his place. He sighed. He was suddenly very tired. The Hillcrest police chief finished, and someone asked Joey about the part Ameritech played. When Joey finished speaking, the chief spoke into the mic. I'm only going to allow a few more questions. Well, I just have one more, Isla said quickly. He nodded. Go ahead. So, Eric, all those hours you were restrained and just waiting, what were you thinking? What went through your head? Eric nodded. I was doing the same thing that I knew my family was doing, that is, praying. Asking God to save you? Well, more like asking God to either help someone find me or help me to accept that it may be His will for my life to be over. Either way, I stayed in prayer. He gave me peace, and He spoke to me in my heart and told me to fight hard to get free. And so I did. He answered my prayers, and here I am. So what do you say to those people who are going through similar hard times and they don't feel like God is answering their prayers? I mean, there are many who don't survive like you and Josie did. Why are you still here and others don't make it? Isla asked, playing devil's advocate, because she wanted people to know the answer to that question, and she knew the Kinos would have a good answer. Well, it's not because I'm special. I'm still alive only because God's not finished with me. He has a plan for each of us, and my work on this earth is apparently not finished. I prayed, my family prayed, and thanks to your prayer circle, Isla, lots of others prayed for me. Maybe those prayers gave me the strength to get free. Maybe they gave me peace or a clear head. Maybe the people who prayed will be blessed because they prayed righteous prayers. And of course, another reporter put in, because you're a Kino, God granted your pleas, but others are not so lucky. So why are the Kinos so blessed and so special? Eric looked up at the man and prayed quickly for the right words to be said. But his father stepped down again and sent Eric back to his place. I'm going to answer this question, and it will be the end of the conference. We Kinos have been blessed in many ways, and we try to live honorable lives worthy of those blessings. We try to live with integrity and honesty and bravery, protecting the innocent and the less fortunate whenever we can. We work hard, we pray hard, we worship hard, we play hard. But like Eric said, we're not special. When I was 10 years old, just a little boy, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. My father and I were devastated. We prayed hard about this. We begged God to spare her, to heal her. We cried, we suffered, and she suffered. But she died right after I turned 11. Some might say that God didn't answer our prayers, but you see, He did. It's just that the answer was no. We cried to Him, why? Why won't you help her? And we listened very hard. And finally the answer came, because what she was supposed to do on this earth, her path, her plan, had been fulfilled. She'd done what she came to do, and we could either accept God's good and perfect will, or we could turn our backs on God and end the relationship. We chose the light over the darkness. We chose to accept His will. We chose to admit that we don't know everything, and we don't understand how everything works, and we need to trust God. Trust Him. And because we did this, He granted us peace of mind and comfort. And if my son had been taken away from us, we would mourn him, we would miss him, but we would know of a certainty that he was where he was supposed to be. If we let go of what we want to happen and just trust God, things will work out for the best. Not what we think is best, but what God thinks is best. Because God, in His infinite wisdom, knows best. Because He knows the whole plan, and we don't. I hope this explanation helps. Thank you for your interest. I wish you all the best. And thanks to the brave men and women at the LAPD, at the Hillcrest Police Department, at the FBI, and at Ameritech. Thank you for your honest and brave service. Keep up the good work. He stepped away from the mic and turned to shake the hands of the officers standing behind him. The family was hurried back inside to wait for the reporters to clear out. Ricky joined them. Dad, young Eric said quickly, thanks for stepping in. No problem. I had no concern that you couldn't handle it, but I felt urged to step in and take control of the day, and so I did. Besides, I wanted them to know that I too had experience with losing someone. He smiled down at Jordan. And you, young lady, totally rocked it. She giggled. He made me so mad, but really, that was scary. The family laughed. Well, I'm very proud of you, Bree said. Yeah, you were awesome, Taylor said. Young Eric pulled out his phone and glanced at the time. Dad, I have to get going if I'm going to meet Nick on time. Ricky nodded. You mind if Agent Trout tags along? He shook his head. No, I don't mind, but do you really think it's necessary? Not really, but it might take me a minute to let go of the tight hold I've had on you over the past few days. Well then, if you're not busy, why don't you come along? Ricky smiled. I'd like that. And I'm going to drop Jordan off at her mother's house first, but let her visit for a while, young Eric said. I guess she's going to need her car back, Ricky offered. Before she starts back to her normal life, let's get our guys to pick up her car, do a thorough check of everything, and make sure the bad guys weren't able to get something on there that we haven't noticed. Young Eric nodded his head. Good idea. I'll get right on that. Okay, so I'll meet you at the store in Hillcrest, and we'll see what we can do for Mr. Sutter. Young Eric looked into his father's eyes. I'm glad you're coming. His father smiled. You feeling a little clingy there, son? I guess, if you have to put a name on it, though that's not such a nice one, so thanks a lot. Ricky chuckled. It's normal. There's going to be some recovery time needed from the trauma you faced. There's a bunch of stages with fancy names. One of the many symptoms is to feel like you don't want to handle things alone, or feel like you can't handle them alone. But you'll get through it. Give it time. Eric, 24 hours ago, you were arriving at a hospital having just been through the fight of your life. It takes time. Okay, well, what happens after this stage? Ricky laughed. Oh, I could tell you, but it would only piss you off. Eric's eyes narrowed as he thought. That was a clue? Ricky smiled and nodded. Anger? Very good. Well, I don't feel any anger right now, just gratitude. Cool. Now let's get on the road. Yes, sir. Over an hour later, young Eric dropped Jordan off at her mother's house, promising to come back after his meeting and warning them that his father will probably want to come see them too, since he's in the area. There was an Ameritech agent in front of the house, and Eric went to speak with him. Agent Wyatt? The agent got out of his car and shook Eric's hand. It's good to see you, Eric. How you feeling? I'm good. A little tired, but it's nice to be able to walk around of my own free will. I bet. Me and the guys, we were sick with worry. We did a lot of praying, and we're all really grateful to God that you and Josie are okay. I was really sick over Josie. You were at the school that day? Yes. And the moment the alarm went off, we tried to get in. We'd already made arrangements with the school that we'd be allowed in for any emergency at any time. But the resource officer was new and apparently didn't get the memo, and by the time we got past him, Josie was already gone. And when we got the news that you'd fought your way out and had Josie with you, I dropped to my knees that very moment. Young Eric nodded thoughtfully. That was a lot of weight to carry on your back. So you're still assigned to watch over them? Yes, for a little while, just to make sure things go back to normal with no problem. Well, thanks for that. No need for thanks, it's my job. But really, I've gotten pretty attached to these kids. Two of the nicest kids I've ever met, and there's a lot of other kids in this neighborhood, most of them from broken homes. Take a walk around here one day. The kids will come right up and talk to you like they're just desperate to have a man pay some attention to them. It's sad. Which also makes them easy prey, young Eric said thoughtfully. I wonder what could we do to help this situation? I mean, what kind of action could we take to help out the kids in this neighborhood? Good question. Let me think about that and get back to you. I've been mulling over some things in my head. They shook hands, and Eric left to meet his father and Nick Sutter. He pulled up to the store next to his father's car and got out. Ricky also got out of his car. Where do you think he is? Young Eric shook his head. I'm not sure. He's usually right over there on the side of the building. Let's go look around. They moved around to the side of the building. Eric slowed and looked over the area where Nick was usually sitting, his back against the wall. He spotted a bouquet of wilted flowers and then realized that those were his flowers. He stopped and picked them up and looked up at his father. He had to put his hand on the side of the building to steady himself. His hands were shaking. His breath became labored. Take a few deep breaths, son. Slow, deep. That's right. I didn't think that coming here would affect me this much. Ricky nodded. It's okay. Remember Taylor in the restroom at the gym? He reached up and put his hand on young Eric's shoulder and said a quick prayer. And Eric immediately felt calmer, and he swallowed. Thanks, Dad. Let's go look back there, he said, pointing toward the back of the store and a little wooded ravine area. There was no one in the back of the store, but they thought they saw something blue in the wooded area and made their way through the underbrush. It's a tent, Ricky said. It's several tents, he added. They came into the clearing. Nick, young Eric called. Nick Sutter, it's me, Eric. We had an appointment, remember? Hold on, someone answered. There was some rustling, and finally Nick poked his head out of a small blue tent. Nick, Eric said quietly, remember me? Yeah, you got me food, and someone told me you got killed. Who told you that? The guy at the store. He said you got yourself killed and that he was going to have us arrested if we didn't leave his store. Eric frowned. Well, as you can see, I'm not dead. And this is my father. Come on out and let's talk. Not sure about this. Okay, I understand. Well, are you hungry? Yeah, we haven't eaten in a few days. We? Yeah, there's 5 of us back here. Oh, okay. Well, all of you come on out and tell me what you'd like to eat, and we'll get it for you. Nick came out of his tent, and then 2 guys came out of another tent, and then a young guy and a pregnant girl came out of the 3rd tent. Both Ricky and young Eric smiled kindly at them all. Hello, young Eric said softly. So, tell me what you'd like to eat, and we'll get it for you. I'd love a burger and some fries, one of the men said. Me too, the other said. Ricky nodded. You got it. Anyone else? I'd like another one of the pizzas, Nick said with a smile. Young Eric smiled back and nodded. No problem. Could we get a Subway sandwich, the young guy asked. Yep, what kind, Ricky asked. It doesn't matter. I mean, maybe with some veggies on it so she can eat something good for her. You've got it. We'll be right back, young Eric said. 30 minutes later, they returned with what they asked for and a whole lot more. Loaves of bread, peanut butter and jelly, a case of water, a large cooler filled with fruit. They also brought protein bars, granola bars, breakfast bars, and 3 bags of cookies. They sat in the clearing and ate their lunch together. Ricky and Eric both also ate with them. They'd chosen the sub sandwich, too. So, Nick, young Eric began, I told you I wanted to talk to you to see what we could do to get you off the streets. The others all looked up at Eric. He obviously had their interest. Nick shook his head. And I told you that I don't think that's going to happen. And I told you that we should at least talk about it. Nick nodded. Except I ain't got nothing to say. Okay, well, let me just ask you this. How long have you been homeless? Nick sighed and shook his head. I can't really remember now. Well, how old are you? I'm 42. Okay, well, before you became homeless, where did you live? Nick laughed. In an apartment with my wife and daughter. That gave Eric pause for a moment. He nodded. And can you remember what made you leave that apartment? He blinked and looked away. They never came back. So your wife left you? Yeah, she left. My kid left too. How old was your daughter the last time you saw her? She was 5. She just started kindergarten. Just tell him, the pregnant girl said impatiently. Just tell him what happened. I can't stand it when people play games. Nick glared at her and then turned back to Eric with a shrug. They died in a car accident. I'm sorry, Eric said softly. And so he totally lost it, the pregnant girl said. He lost his job, he lost his home, he lost his car, and he didn't care about any of that because all he wanted was to see his wife and kid again. Eric smiled at her. What's your name? Destiny. Eric's brows rose. Yeah, she said. Ironic, isn't it? Well, I don't know if ironic is the right word. It depends on what you think your destiny is, Ricky put in. Well, from where I sit, it doesn't look like it's too good. Well, this doesn't have to be your destiny. Destiny? Oh, yeah, well, who's going to change this? She said, gesturing around at the tents. God will, Ricky said softly. The girl snorted. Ricky smiled. He sent us to change all this for you, but he's waiting on you to take the first step. So you just think about what that step needs to be while we talk to Nick. He turned back to young Eric and nodded for him to go on. Eric looked at Nick. So, Nick, what was your wife's name? Teresa. And my little girl, her name was Risa. You know, sort of named after her mom. Do you remember how old you were when they died? I was 28. So you've been homeless for about 14 years? That's a long time. Yeah, and really, I don't care. Because your wife and daughter are dead, so what is there to live for? Now you get it. I understand, Eric said instinctively instead of arguing with him. So, Ricky began, you have nothing to live for, right? But you're still alive, even after 14 years, so something's keeping you alive. What's really holding you back from getting off the streets? I don't got no money. Well, if I were to offer you a job, would you take it? No. Why not? You don't understand. Maybe not, but try me. He can't hold on to a job, one of the other men said. Ricky nodded. Because? Because he's strung out half the time. Mind your business, Nick warned. Look, man, these guys are trying to help you, and you're throwing it back in their faces, and you're doing that because you don't want to get clean. Because the drugs help the pain, right, Nick? Ricky asked. Nick looked away. You're obviously broke. Where do you get the money to buy it? Nick sighed, stood, and started to walk away. If you leave, you may be throwing away the best chance for relief that ever came into your life, Ricky warned. Nick, let us help you. There are treatments now where you can get off the drugs. Nick, what if I told you that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you will see your wife and daughter again? They're just waiting on you to take a first step. Just one step. You do that, and God will take over. I promise you. You're just blowing smoke. Maybe. But what if I'm not? What could it hurt to try? If you try and fail, you end up right back here, right? And I'm telling you that if you work with us, you will feel happy again. And you won't hurt anymore. Nick's eyes filled and he turned and ducked inside his tent. With Nick hiding inside his tent, young Eric looked at the other 4 people. The offer stands to each of you. We want to help you, and we can. Tell us how you got to this point in your life and what you wish could happen for you. Well, I think it's pretty obvious, Destiny said. She looked at her boyfriend. Alec and me, we got pregnant. He wanted to marry me, but my dad was real mad, and he threw me out of the house. And then Alec's mom said he couldn't see me anymore. He needed to study hard and go to college and forget about me, and I really couldn't blame her for that. And Alec was like at the top of his class. He graduated with honors last year. He was going to go to college on a scholarship, and, Ricky said, turning to Alec. He shrugged. And I love her, and I'm not going to forget about her or my child. I couldn't leave her. I told that to my mom, and she said if I didn't obey her, I could get out. So I did. And I got a stupid job as a server in a restaurant, and we lucked out with a vacancy in a low-income housing project. But then my car got vandalized, and I couldn't afford to get it fixed. So I went back to my mom and asked her, really begged her, if she would help me, and she turned me down. So I started taking the bus. But the timing wasn't right, and after my 3rd time being late, I lost my job. And then no one would hire me. And Desi tried to find a job, but she was showing, and no one would hire her, and we couldn't pay our rent, and here we are. I should be in my 1st year of college right now, but I just couldn't leave Desi. But at least we have a tent and some blankets and pillows that some guy brought for us. Well, that was very kind of someone to do that, Eric said, but if you're willing to accept that help, would you consider letting us help you really get back on your feet? We can make it so that you can finish school, go to college if you want, or trade school or whatever. I mean, we can figure out what you want to do, and we can get Destiny some good medical attention for her and the baby. We can help find you a home. If you're willing to take some first steps. Are you willing? Well, yeah, I'd be crazy to turn that down. Obviously, I have no pride left. I'd do anything, especially for Destiny and our child. But why are you doing this? Because, he stopped and thought of what Jordan had said and smiled. Because God waved his hand and placed you in front of me. And he has put it on our hearts to help you. He looked at the other two men. All of you. But you have to put in the effort, Ricky added. One of the other men narrowed his eyes. You look familiar. Have we met before? Ricky shook his head. No. Young Eric smiled. My father's name is Ricky Kino. You may have heard of him. You know, I was thinking he looked just like Ricky Kino, but thought that was too crazy to be real, Destiny said. Alec nodded his head. Me too. Wow. Ricky Kino. He looked at young Eric. So you're Eric. And your sister's Taylor Kino, right? He smiled. Yes. Why? Do you know her? No, I just know of her. I mean, what guy doesn't? When Ricky and Eric didn't answer, Alec looked up, his eyes wide. Oh, I didn't mean any disrespect. Destiny also knows about her, right, Desi? She giggled. Yes. How old are you two? Ricky asked. I'm 18. Desi is 17. What school did you go to? We both went to Hillcrest High School, Alec said. I used to be a cheerleader, and Alec was the senior class president last year. He graduated. I won't. I'm supposed to be a senior right now, Destiny added. Ricky nodded. Okay. Well, you two kids are definitely coming back with me for the night. And then we'll find you a place and start on getting your lives turned around. He looked at the other two men, both older. What's your names? I'm Jerry. This is my buddy Arnie. How long have you two been on the street? Ricky asked. Oh, I'd say going on 30 years, Jerry said. Wow. Yeah, we've been surviving a long time. I started on the streets when I got hooked on drugs. I'm clean now. I've been clean for 20 years at least, but I can't seem to find my way back. And Arnie here, he's a little bit, well, slow, you know. I sort of take care of him. Ricky nodded. Well, if you want help to get off the streets, have a real home, work a little bit to help earn your way, and have help taking care of your friend, you've got it. Arnie and me, we'd be mighty grateful for your help. We'll be grateful to God because he's the one who sent us here. He loves you, and I have a feeling he has some plans for you, for all of you, including Nick, who was the one God used to bring us here. Dad, I'm going to go talk to Nick. Ricky nodded. While he does that, let's talk about some concrete arrangements. Jerry, do you and Arnie want to get out of your tents right now today, or do you want to take some time to think it over? Where would we go if we leave today? Jerry asked. Well, there are several shelters in the area run by the Heal the World Foundation. They're clean. You have your own bed, but would have to share a room, so you and Arnie would be together. Meals are provided. There are showers and linens provided. You would be asked to help in some way, like help cook or do dishes or take out the trash. Easy stuff like that. The best thing is they're run by good people. You'd be interviewed when you first get there, and you can tell them if you have any health issues where you might need to see a doctor, that kind of thing. Everyone there is taught to be in service. That means help others and don't focus on your own problems. It is only a place to stay until you're able to get on your feet, and there are counselors to help you figure out the best way to do that, the best way to get on your feet. But I will also help you with that because you are under my wing now.
This is a reminder. Drink water.
This
is a reminder. Drink water.
And there are counselors to help you figure out the best way to do that. But I will also help you with that because you are under my wing now. Well, this sounds almost too good to be true, Jerry said as tears formed in his eyes. Ricky smiled kindly. If you want to leave today, I can arrange it. You might want to pack things, clean up your area, leave things better than when you found it. I can do that. Then you do want to leave today. Yes, sir. Just the pleasure of seeing Arnie rest his head on a real bed, that'll be worth it all. Ricky stood and pulled out his phone. Okay then, let me make some phone calls. He walked away as he called the manager of the Greater Los Angeles shelters to begin finding a vacancy. Inside Nick's tent, young Eric wasn't having as much success, though Nick did begin to share some personal information. Like Saturday, when Eric was taken, Nick was pretty gone on heroin, and he transports the drugs for some local dealers in exchange for his personal supply. Nick, I can take you out of here right now. Today, Eric said. There's a place I can take you where they have medication-assisted treatment. They'll give you the drugs to slowly help you withdraw so that you don't have the bad symptoms of withdrawal. And I'll take care of all the arrangements. Please, Nick, let me help you. I understand how much you loved your family, and they were taken from you, but they are in the arms of Jesus. You really believe that stuff? I know it. I've been given too many signs and too many miracles. God is real, Nick, I swear. And if you turn your life over to Him, He can work a miracle in your life, and you'll begin to see. Just try. Try for 1 month. 1 month, and if you don't feel 1,000% better, then you can take off. But, Nick, believe. Open your mind and believe. Do that, and you'll see your wife and daughter again. That's the whole reason Jesus was born, to overcome death and pain and hell. And He did. He overcame it. He said, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me you might have peace. In the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." What harm could it do to at least try? Medical-assisted treatment, huh? Yes. No withdrawal? Well, there will be withdrawal, but it will be bearable because they will give you drugs to help. You can do this. Nick nodded. Okay, I'll give it a try, but give me a day. Give me a day to pack up my stuff and get my mind right. Eric nodded. Fine. A day. I'll be back here tomorrow afternoon. I'll be ready. Young Eric extended his hand and Nick shook it. Why do you care so much? Nick asked. Well, God sent me to you. He loves you, and because of that, I love you. I'll serve God and you in any way I can. That's just how it is. Eric walked out of the tent to see that what his father had accomplished. These two are coming home with me tonight, and Angel is arranging for a place for them to stay at one of her teen pregnancy shelters. Are you still thinking about stopping by to see Jordan's family? I told them you would, and they're pretty excited about it. I guess I shouldn't have said anything. Oh, no, that's okay. Yes, I'll stop by. I'm sure these guys won't mind if we make a stop. Will you? He asked, looking at them. No, sir, not at all, Destiny said. Alec came out of their tent and dumped a bunch of bags at their feet. That's everything, he said. And what about the tent? Ricky asked. Well, I thought I might leave it. I left a note saying whoever finds it can have it. Ricky nodded. Eric, help these kids get their stuff into the trunk of my car. Yes, sir. A few minutes later, Ricky looked at his phone and then spoke to Jerry. Your ride is about to pull up. They looked as a black SUV pulled around the side of the store and parked at the back curb. Ricky walked out of the woods and went to shake the driver's hand. Someone call for a ride, Agent Bryant said with a smile. Dad, you got a mare tech to act as a cab, young Eric chided. I was on the phone to Angel looking for a place for the kids there, and Jason was listening. I mentioned I was about to get an Uber for these guys, and Jason said he had an agent coming back from an assignment down south of here, and he could have him stop by. So I accepted. Young Eric chuckled. He nodded at Jerry and Arnie. Hey, guys, I'm really glad you've decided to get help. He offered his hand. It was nice to meet you. Thank you, young man, for your kindness. Oh, Agent Bryant, let me get this cooler of fruit. Take it to the shelter, too, Ricky said. I'll get it, Dad, young Eric said quickly. A few minutes later, Jerry and Arnie were driving away to a new life. Young Eric and his father said goodbye to Nick, promising to see him again the next day. Alec and Destiny were loaded in the back seat of Ricky's car, and young Eric glanced up at his father. He was frowning. "What's wrong?" "I don't like it. I don't like Nick staying here another day. That's exactly when something bad will happen." Eric smiled. Yeah, in the movies." Ricky nodded. "Well, movies mirror real life, and vice versa." He pulled out his phone and called Jason. "Didn't I just speak with you?" Jason asked. Ricky laughed. "Yeah, I want to hire 2 agents ASAP." "Well, okay, hold on, 'cause Joey's on call right now." Ricky waited a minute. "Joey's on the line. Go ahead," Jason said. "Joey, I want to hire 2 agents ASAP to watch out for a homeless guy who was promised to meet us here tomorrow to go in and get clean. He's been doing some transport for local dealers, and I'm thinking he's put us off to let them know that he won't be around to help them anymore. They're not going to like that, and it could get ugly. I just want to keep this guy alive until we get him tomorrow." "Copy that. I'm guessing we're talking about Nick Sutter down at the convenience store in Hillcrest?" "Yes, but he's in a tent back in the woods behind the store, and I don't want him to know that we're watching him because he might get spooked and not meet us tomorrow." "Then we'll need discretion and camo." "Got it. ETA 1 hour." "Thanks, Joey." "You're very welcome, Grandmaster Kino." "Jason, sorry to bother you." "I'm always here for you, Ricky." And that is the end of Chapter 1 of number 11.